Humans have evolved in the presence of stars in the night sky. They have guided us when we needed directions. They helped us plant crops at appropriate times of the year. In wishful thinking, some of us even see guidance about our future in the rise and fall of stars in the night sky. And their nature, it has puzzled us and intrigued us and even has led to some of the biggest revolutions in human perceptions. But we may now be losing access to stars and the night sky, and with it, we may be losing an important part of human legacy. This is Cosmic Gup Shup, and I am Salman Hameed. Welcome to the first episode of Cosmic Gup Shup. Gup Shup in South Asia means a little chit-chat. My name is Salman Hameed. I'm a professor at Hampshire College, and I'm also part of the 5-college Astronomy department in Massachusetts. I also founded Kainaat Studios that creates high-quality astronomy content in Urdu for audience in South Asia and also in English. These videos, these Cosmic Gup Shup videos, are part of a collaboration between the International Astronomical Union's Office of Astronomy Outreach and Kainaat Studios. In these videos, we intend to highlight and emphasize important astronomical discoveries and events all around the world. These videos will be available along with supporting material as well on the IAU's Office of Astronomy Outreach website and also on the YouTube channel in both English and in Urdu. Please check those out. Stars have played an important part in human history on this planet. Their rising and setting and positions in the night skies have led humans to find directions in deserts and in the middle of the oceans. For example, it is with the help of the stars that Polynesian voyagers navigated the vast Pacific Ocean. We also see shapes in the distribution of stars in the sky, and then in turn, we create stories to make meaning about ourselves. For example, Pleiades. This is a grouping of stars that most of us are familiar with. In Maori mythology, the constellation is known as Matariki and is associated with the start of the Maori New Year. The appearance of Matariki in the sky then is seen as a time for remembrance and renewal, as well as a time to celebrate new beginnings. Similarly, Orion is one of the most prominent constellations of the night sky, and cultures all around the world have noted its appearance. For example, here is an illustration of Orion in the Book of Fixed Stars, written by Persian astronomer Abdul Rahman al-Sufi around 974 of the Common Era in the city of Shiraz in modern-day Iran. The Book of Fixed Stars is a fascinating and beautiful book. He did not know it, but al-Sufi also noticed a fuzzy patch next to an Arabic constellation, Big Fish. He called this fuzzy patch a little cloud. Today, we know it as Andromeda Galaxy, which is the nearest spiral galaxy located about 2 million light years from Earth, and it is visible to the naked eye from the darkest skies in the world. But medieval works like the Book of Fixed Stars, and there are many more, were carefully tabulating the positions of stars and trying to understand the nature of the heavens. It is this increasing accuracy of the positions of stars that eventually led to the overthrow of the Earth-centered cosmology and opened up the universe. It revealed Earth to be just one of the worlds orbiting the Sun. It led to Kepler's discoveries about the orbits of the planets around the star, and also the Newton's law of gravity. In fact, it is our understanding of gravity that has allowed humans to send spacecrafts around the Earth. Here is a spectacular picture of the Nile Delta seen at night, taken from the International Space Station. You can clearly see the outlines of human presence, with Cairo glowing in the night. Here is another picture, and this is a little bit on the sadder note. Here you can see the border between India and Pakistan, known as the Radcliffe Line, reflecting what happened in 1947. This is all lit up, but this is not tracing human presence, but rather it is reflecting our fear for each other. But these bright lights on the planet are relatively recent compared to the history of the planet, including that of humans. Light from fire at night has been important for humans, but the light from a fire that kept predators away is nothing compared to the bulbs that light up our night skies today. We are now safe from other animals. We don't need fire to keep them at bay. But now we have to worry about saving animals from the lights that humans have created. As you can imagine, there are many instances of species whose existence is threatened by our lights. We know that newly hatched turtles get confused by city lights. Moths and fireflies have their reproductive cycles disrupted, and prey that could hide in darkness no longer have that luxury. We may be safe from other animals, but many of the animals are themselves not safe anymore. It will come as no surprise to know that humans are impacted by that as well. For example, cities like Singapore, they are so bright that their inhabitants do not see stars in the night sky at all. Or a place like Hong Kong, whose night sky is 1,200 times brighter than the night sky in a dark location. As you can imagine, all of this comes with an impact on human health. It disrupts our biological rhythm and our biological clock that can lead to problems like obesity and depression. It all makes sense. After all, species here on Earth have adapted over hundreds of millions of years of evolution. But the dramatic brightness of the night sky has happened only over the last 100 years or so. The problem is that our lights are brightening at an ever faster rate. And now it is threatening our heritage of the night sky itself. There are programs, there are people who look at it from the environmental justice perspective as well. And in the description of this video, you can find some resources for that. But I also want to recommend a wonderful and beautifully written new book by bat researcher Johann Eckloff. It is called The Darkness Manifesto on Light Pollution, Night Ecology, and the Ancient Rhythms that Sustain Life. It is a meditation on the darkness of night and the intrusion of artificial light in nature. One of my favorite sentences of the book, it is the start of a chapter. It goes like this: the first eyes saw the world 540 million years ago. Now, this is a beautiful sentence because indeed, there may have been the first eyes that actually saw the world. While there were species that could detect light, but to have an actual lens that could focus an image, that ability, scientists think, developed around the time of the Cambrian explosion. Now, humans have much more complicated eyes. And it is these eyes that have allowed us to look at the stars in the night sky and to think about their nature. But the brightness, because of artificial lights, is taking the beauty of that stars away from what humans can see with their eyes. How bad is this problem of light pollution? As most of you can guess that the problem is not getting better, it is only getting worse. And now a recent paper by Kiba et al. Has come out that estimates that the night sky is brightening 7 to 10% every year. Let me say this again. The estimates are that the night sky is brightening 7 to 10% every year. This is quite sobering. Now, this authors of this study used data from over 50,000 citizen scientists, volunteers between 2011 and 2022, in which they were given, these volunteers were given star charts and were asked to identify which of the stars they can see. And that allowed the authors to estimate the faintest stars that people can see over a period of time. Now, some of these results are surprising because observations from satellites had not indicated such dire scenario. And the authors think that one of the reasons why there is a discrepancy between what humans on the ground can see up in the sky versus the satellites has to do with the LEDs. These are the lights that are being used more and more. They are energy efficient, but as it turns out, we are using them a lot more, and their light peaks in the bluer end of the spectrum. And most of the satellite observations are not too sensitive in that direction. So the authors think that our own estimates from the ground, from these volunteers, are better than what the satellites have been measuring. So we have to take the issue of light pollution pretty seriously, especially if we are losing stars at such a high rate. Now, there are some shortcomings of the study as well. For example, these are volunteers distributed all over the world, and as you can imagine, they are mostly in high populated areas and mostly in the developed world. And so the population is not divided all over the place uniformly. For example, in Asia, in fact, more than half of the volunteers were from Japan. Similarly, in Australia, most of the population, and consequently most of these volunteers were in the coastal regions, whereas a lot of Australia is not well inhabited. Setting aside those shortcomings, the authors' findings are still very sobering and very concerning. What can be done about the problem of light pollution? Now, growing up in Karachi, I remember that we used to wait for the power to go out. It was called load shedding and used to happen quite frequently. Unfortunately, it still does. And so while this was an anguish to justifiably for most of the population, for me and my friends, that was a golden opportunity to take out telescopes and see the dark sky above Karachi. Now, as you can imagine, well, this is a short reprieve, but this is not exactly the solution we are looking for. Johann Eckloff, the author of The Darkness Manifesto, calls light pollution the easiest environmental problem to solve. And you can imagine why, because you can take steps individually as well. For example, if there are outside lights that are not necessary, well, don't switch them on. There are also several groups that are working on it. For example, International Dark Skies Association, and I'm going to provide a lot of links in the description of this video. International Astronomical Union, IAU, they also have a commission and also a global project to protect dark skies, not just from light, but also in radio frequencies as well. All the places that can impact astronomy. But this is beyond astronomy. As what we have been talking about, this is about protecting human heritage. IAU also has a wonderful brochure that not only articulates the problem of light pollution, but also it suggests way how you and I can take steps to reduce it. Now, this brochure is available in multiple languages, including Chinese, Arabic, Bhasha Indonesian, Turkish, Filipino, etc. We are getting it translated in Urdu and Hindi as well. What can you and I do about light pollution? Now, I do have to make a statement that I know that for a lot of environmental challenges, oftentimes the trick from corporations is to put the onus or responsibility on individuals. And here that is the case too, because a much bigger problem lies with industries and other things. Nevertheless, individuals can still make a difference in this particular case. So for example, International Dark Sky Association has listed 5 steps. And again, in the description of this video, I'm going to provide links to some of those resources. But what are those 5 steps that you and I can take to reduce light pollution? The first one is useful lights. Now, this goes without saying. Use lights only when and where needed. You don't have to switch on lights that are not needed, especially those that are outside. Second, the lighting has to be targeted. Perhaps this is one of the most important things. Keep the light from leaking upwards or sideways. There is a fascinating new study that explores why insects move towards light. And as it turns out, this study found, this is a complete aside, what they found was that some of these insects that move towards the light, what they are trying to do is to orient themselves in terms of the sky and the sun. So the back of those insects is always facing the sun. But when you have an artificial light, that impacts them because they think that is where the sun is and they go round and round around that light. Now this is beautiful for metaphor, this is beautiful for poets, but not good for insects. And in fact, what this particular study found was that the real damage comes from those lights that are facing upwards or are sideways, meaning to say towards the horizon. That is what causes these insects to get disoriented. And similarly, the other studies have also found that in terms of light pollution as well, those light that face the horizon, that go to the sideways, impact light pollution or sky brightening the most. So targeted lights with a shade where the light is facing downwards, that's the best idea. Now, third thing is about the level of light. Keep them low. You do not need bright lights when they are not needed. The fourth thing is that you should have a controlled lighting. Now there are motion sensor lights that are quite common, and that again reduces light. It only works when it is needed. So when possible, use timers or motion detection sensors for your lights. The fifth thing is about the color of the light. So instead of using bluish white bulbs, which I also mentioned earlier on, these LED lights that also peak in the bluish light, use warmer colored light that is better for us. And this is one of those reasons why people also say that looking at the screen or your phones before you go to sleep or at nighttime, in fact, disrupts your biological rhythm. So again, if you have to use the lights, use lights with warmer colors. I do want to clarify, LED lights are great in terms of energy efficiency. And now they come in warmer colors as well. So if you can use those, then you have energy efficient light bulbs without the ill effects of blue light. But still use lights in moderation. Now these are all the steps that are for individuals, but of course you should also press your local councillors, your local government to take these steps for street lights, for floodlights, especially floodlights that go sideways. I'm from Pakistan. I know there are a lot of cricket games that happen. Unfortunately, those are not really good lights. Nevertheless, we cannot abandon cricket, but we can try to reduce as much as we can. And so we can pressure local governments to reduce, to take these steps, to have control lights, warmer colored lights, and those that are pointing downwards. Many of us have been fortunate to see really stars from the really dark skies. I've been fortunate to have gone for observing in Chile, from New Mexico, Arizona, Hawaii, the Spanish Canary Islands, and truly, the night sky from a dark place is truly majestic. But there is a danger that later generations may not have that options to see that night sky. This scenario was depicted in some ways, it's a very different case, in Isaac Asimov's book, a novel from 1941. It was called Nightfall. In it, the story takes place on a planet called Lagash, which is home to 6 suns, and there is constant daylight there. However, in that story, once every roughly 2,000 years, a total eclipse occurs, plunging the planet into darkness. Now, Asimov imagined what it would be like, and he does it really wonderfully, for people to see stars as piercing lights for the very first time. People will be completely disoriented by these piercing light from those stars. Now, we fortunately don't live in such a system. We have a wonderful night sky. We do not want to lose it because of our own follies, because of our own missteps.